What is up everyone, it's Horror Master and I'm back with yet another video, and this time I'm gonna do it with something a little bit more continuing from my previous video. So the last video I did it on my top 10 bands for horror fans, and I talked about that, there's a lot of horror fans who are not really into metal, so I did that list to, I guess, kind of help an upcoming metalhead who's a huge horror fan trying to get more into metal bands and all that and so on and so forth. But I want to do the tables around. What if a metal fan wants to get into horror? Now, if you're already a metal fan, you must love already gory stuff. If you've listened to bands like Cannibal Corpse, Obituary, Slayer, not Megadeth, Mayhem, so on and so forth. But I do understand that there is a majority of people, or a small percentage of people, who are trying to find a way to get into horror. So since I did my previous video about a horror fan trying to get into metal, why not a metal fan trying to get into horror? So like I said, in this video I'm doing my top 10 horror movies for metal fans. And I kind of trying to do something different with lists. I didn't go with, horror themed metal movies, because I think those movies are appealing for both metal and horror fans. I wanted to do something that's pure on horror, and you kind of make a metalhead dig into more obscure and maybe weird horror movies down the line. So this again, this is subjective, like all my lists have done in the past couple of videos. So I'm not jibber jabber. Let's get into it. So I have two honorable mentions. I just have two this time. The first honorable mention that I have is Rosemary's Baby. Now, Rosemary's Baby is one of those early to mid 60s movies that, at the time it wasn't really appreciated, but as time went on, it got a kind of a cult following. Of course, when you're literally talking about a woman carrying the spawn of Satan. I mean, we always joke, us metalheads always joke around that we're the spawn of Satan, but what if you were actually literally the spawn of Satan, And this movie takes a lot of turns. I mean, from the imagery to the fucking poster to everything that Rosemary's Baby does. It's a revolutionary horror movie that I do recommend metal fans to check out. And my second and last honorable mention is, of course, Suspiria. Of course, Dario Argento's masterful movie that I saw this movie, I think, when I was maybe 18, 17 years old at the time, and holy shit, I never thought horror could be so choreographically beautiful, if I get to say so myself. Because the thing about Dario Argento is that the way he mixes colors and the camera makes it seem so beautiful. Even the way that he's killing, some of the characters in the movie made him seem so artistic, which it's rare when you get that in horror. But not to mention the soundtrack from this movie is so freaky and horrifying that, if you're a metal fan and you love your beautiness in metal, you're gonna love your beautiness in horror. So again, Suspiria, my last honorable mention. But now, let's get into the top 10. So at my number 10, we have, of course, The Shining. The Shining is probably one of the greatest horror movies of all time. Of course, from Jack Nicholson to Shelby Duvall to Danny Lloyd, of course, playing individually there, from Jack to Danny to trying to remember her name, to Wendy. Of course, this family who takes on, this family who takes on this role of actually looking for a hotel during the winter time for around, I want to say, 6 to 5 months, half a year. And of course, when you're in isolation, a lot of things could happen. You could literally lose your fucking mind, which, of course, Jack Nicholson's character, Jack, did lose his mind. Of course, not to mention that the fucking place was haunted with ghosts and that weird scene in the bathroom, which it's still freaked out. But of course, not only that, but this movie has gone into pop culture. That even The Simpsons did a parody of The Shining, called it The Shining, in one of their Treehouse of Horror. I don't remember if it's the first one or the fourth one, I don't remember. But of course, The Shining, like I said, one of the greatest horror movies that has ever existed. One of the best Stephen King adaptations taken from the book, which I have read the book, and I do recommend y'all to read the book, which I do all recommend y'all to read the book if you have the time, but if you can't, watch the movie. But like I said, a great, great horror movie for metal fans to enjoy. At number 9, we have probably the oldest movie in my entire list, and I'm talking about Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece, Psycho. If you have seen Bates Motel, it's kind of the story of how, of course, Norman Bates killed, his mother, how he became insane. But at the time, you're talking about one of the most iconic scenes in horror when you have the freaking bathroom scene. How many times has that been in pop culture, duplicated in TV shows, commercials, horror movies, you name it. It has gone to death. But, of course, Alfred Hitchcock, the master of horror himself, did this at the time where horror movies were barely getting in notoriety. Of course, this around the same time the Universal Monsters was around. Of course, like Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy, the Phantom of the Opera, so on and so forth. But the thing about Psycho is that it is regarded as probably the greatest horror movie of time because of the twist at the end, which I won't spoil it. But if you have not seen Psycho, what the hell are you doing right here? Like I said, you'll enjoy the living crap out of Psycho. Number 8, Bip, we have Sleepy Hollow. Now, Sleepy Hollow, like I mentioned, probably one of my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. It's a bit of a throwback to the 17 to late, close to the 19th century, end of the 18th, close to the 19th century. Movie based, of course, you have the legendary Johnny Depp, Christina Ricci. She's the freaking Christopher Walken as the headless horseman, which I thought was fucking metal as hell, especially with the tease and the black horse. I just love the movie. But if you get a chance to also read the book, I mean, the book has a lot of more insights to the story, and you'll love. I mean, of course, it's an urban myth in around, I want to say, in the New York, somewhere in the New York area, New Jersey, Massachusetts area. If somebody could correct me in the comments, I'm not really mostly knowing my geographical stuff, but nevertheless, I mean, probably one of the best movies Tim Burton has ever directed, and of course, Tim Burton has directed so much. But you know, like I said, if you're a metal fan and you like your more gothic side of metal, symphonic, even more romanticized, you'll love Sleepy Hollow. At number 7, we have Halloween. Of course, what more has been said about Halloween that I haven't mentioned before? When you have Michael Myers, probably one of the most iconic slashers ever in horror. Not only that, but the fucking performances from, of course, the legendary Jamie Lee Curtis, the Scream of Horror herself. You also have Donald Pleasence, of course, playing Dr. Loomis, God rest his soul. But the thing about the Halloween movie, the first one, I mean, you can go and watch the Rob Zombie remakes, which they are gory, more gory than, of course, the original 6 movies. But for my money's worth, the original will never be untouched because it's a movie that at the time, it was a make or break. John Carpenter and Deborah Hill put a lot of effort and money into this movie, and they didn't know if it was gonna bomb or it was gonna be a big success. Of course, almost 45 years later, we're still talking about Halloween and the impact it had on horror. And like I said, if you're a huge metal fan and you like your more slow pace slash killers without not much goriness but more, I guess, finesse, then you'll definitely love Halloween. At number 6, we have Scream, the original Scream. Of course, this was one of Wes Craven's 90s movies, and of course, at the time, this revolutionized what it was to be a horror movie. Of course, Wes Craven, formerly, of course, has directed movies like People Under the Stairs, Nightmare on Elm Street, Serpent and the Rainbow, so on and so forth. But the thing about Scream is that it was something that has never been done before. At the time, it was a movie within a movie. You know, kind of how the rules of how to survive a horror movie were infiltrated in the entire movie, and some of those rules in horror were actually true. Of course, don't go alone to a cabin, or don't have sex in a weird unknown place where there's a forest and all that. You know, there was these kind of rules that you have to follow to survive a horror movie. And of course, Ghostface, one of the most iconic slashers of the 90s. To this day, of course, the amount of fucking memes I've seen of people dressing as Ghostface, and the weird ass fetishes that people have with Ghostface, but that's a different story. And side note, I have seen the new Scream movie. It is gory as hell, and probably one of the best, probably my top three favorite Scream movie of the entire franchise. Next to probably Scream 3, so Scream 1, 3, and then of course this one's Scream, or Scream 5, whatever you want to call it. But I do recommend y'all to watch Scream 5. At number 5, we have Hellraiser. The first thing that popped in my head was fucking Lemmy playing poker with Pinhead himself. I mean, how much money can you get for Lemmy? I mean, he's fucking God. Lemmy, of course, playing fucking poker with with Pinhead and fucking winning. I mean, that alone gets my vote. But besides that, of course, this is at the time Clive Barker's masterful work. It is a very bloody movie, if I can say so myself, because of course the Cenobites, from Pinhead to the rest of the Cenobites, are kind of these weird ass creatures, nor demons, nor angels. It all depends on how, of course, you use the puzzle box. It could be giving you your biggest pleasures, desires, or your worst nightmares, and all that. And of course, this has, like I said, when I'm watching this movie, it reminds me of something that could probably be in a Cannibal Corpse song, or something that could be in something like, I don't know, like a huge gory ass death metal band that, you know, would fit. But of course, I mean, from Pinhead, probably one of the most iconic horror icons in horror. Like I said, if you have not seen Pinhead, I mean Hellraiser, or haven't even seen the music video for Hellraiser by Motorhead, go do yourself a favor and go watch it, for the love of God. At number 4, we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Of course, I'm talking about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I've talked about how the remake, the 2003 version, is probably my favorite Texas Chainsaw Massacre of all time, because it was more gory, psychological, grimy, bit of a more out there movie. But you know, second is like there's the original, because the original, of course, it's the fucking original. It came first. But about the thing about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, that I do like is that, you know, this was your traditional, typical way of actually giving a horror movie, because of course you have Leatherface, like I said, another iconic figure in horror. Kind of, you don't know if he's demented or he's fucked up in the head. You don't know what the hell is wrong with Pinhead. Of course, from his mask being made of actual of human skin. You know, how much money can you get? Of course, that movie was inspired by Ed Gein, probably one of the most infamous serial killers in history. And of course, that also inspired the song Dead Skin Mask by Slayer in the Season of the Abyss album, which I do recommend y'all to check out. But of course, the Chainsaw Massacre, a movie that will stand the test of time, and a movie that I do recommend you all to watch, even if you're not really into more grounded horror movies, more 70s movies, because this movie's kind of slow at first. First, you gotta get through the hitchhiker, and of course the farm, and of course the ending. Of course, and I'm talking about not Hellraiser, fucking Leatherface dancing with a chainsaw and doing his, you know, dance. But you know what? It's a great movie. Now we're into the top 3. At my number 3, we have The Exorcist. Probably it is my favorite horror movie of all time. Of course, when you have a band like Possessed, who wrote a song about The Exorcist in their 7 church albums, how much brutal can you get at that? But again, at the time, and I've talked about this before. The Exorcist was a movie that a lot of people couldn't believe that all those special effects were actually special effects. They actually thought that what they saw in the movie was real. And it gets to show how much CGI has evolved over the years. Of course, I do like some CGI from time to time. Of course, from like movies like The Avengers and all that. Of course, the CGI is amazing, but there are some movies, some horror movies that I really don't need the CGI, like movies like Jason X, but Jason X, but you know, at the time, this movie was a revolutionary movie. Of course, I'm talking about the exorcism scene. Of course, one of the most iconic scenes of horror, when Reagan comes to the stairs like a fucking spider and with the blood coming out. Of course, I'm talking about the head spinning. At the time, it was just makeup effects, puppets, and just things that unfortunately not a lot of horror movies today can go back to and replicate something like that, which is something that I do miss from classic horror movies. I wish that, I mean, there are some movies that try to do their best to bring that, I guess, sense of nostalgia back into fans, but you know what? It's another movie that I do recommend I'll watch out. At number 2, we have The Evil Dead. What more can I say about The Evil Dead? Like I said, when I mentioned with Possessed and Severed Churches, when you have death, write the song Evil Dead right away. It has my money's worth. But of course, I'm talking about Bruce Campbell, of course, Sam Raimi, who, of course, is, like I said, has directed the Spider-Man movies, and of course, Doctor Strange Multiverse for Madness. Again, the same thing that I said about The Exorcist with the special effects, the CGI and the makeup effects, everything was just so gory, so unique that, like I said, I miss when horror movies were like that. Of course, The Evil Dead being at the time, a B movie, which a lot of people shared that it wasn't gonna make money, and 40 plus years later, one of the most iconic movies of all time. Of course, you have the infamous "Join Us, Join Us," and of course, you have Bruce Campbell playing Ash. I mean, groovy. What more can you want from that? And my number 1, this is a movie that a lot of people I've talked about have said that if they want to get into horror and they're metal fans, this is one of the movies that they mostly might help them out. And of course, I'm talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now, the reason I say that this movie is my number 1 is for one reason. I mean, if you ever heard the album Horror Show by Iceberg, which is probably my favorite Iceberg album of all time, they have all the songs are dedicated to horror icons like Jack the Ripper, The Omen, so on and so forth. But the song Dracula, if you put the song next to the movie, it's a perfect match. Like the perfect match made in heaven or the perfect match made in hell, whatever you want to say. And you know what Iceberg sings about the movie from the song to the movie, it's kind of on point. And of course, like I said, at the time, a bit of more gothic, romanticized horror, which, like I said, a lot of gothic metal fans, symphonic metal fans, or just fans of romanticized things in horror love about that. And Bram Stoker's Dracula is one of the most, like, probably one of the best adaptations of Dracula. Of course, if you have not read the book, which I seriously recommend you to read it, it's a really good book. But the thing about Bram Stoker's Dracula that I do like is that it combines everything. Like I said, horror, suspense, romanticized, gothic elements, symphonic elements, everything you want in horror, just right there. And that's why I have Bram Stoker's Dracula as my number 1. And that does it for this video. A bit of a shorter video because I actually just went at it. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the fun stuff. And as for future videos, like I said, I still have a lot of ideas that I want to bring you all guys. I'm trying to think probably my next video, or maybe an album review. I'll probably see if I can review probably Immolation's new album, which should come out sometime this week or maybe tomorrow, depending on when I upload this video. I want to do probably my top favorite comic book movies, or my top 10 comic book heroes, or you know, I don't know, something that will appeal to not just metal and horror fans, but I also want to go outside of that and probably do more comic book stuff, or I don't know, even Funko Pops, or I don't know, something just to entertain. Cause like I said, I'm a big ass nerd, and I want to express my love for things to you guys. And like I said, hope you guys enjoyed. And until next time, stay metal.